You know those YouTube videos of people doing mukbangs and food eating challenges? Well, personally, I'm not a fan, but I don't judge. A lot of people watch them. I guess that for some people, there's just something captivating about seeing so much food go down someone's gullet. A long, long time ago, this was also a topic of conversation when Tarrare, a showman with a unique talent, captivated audiences and medical experts alike. At first glance, there was nothing remarkable about this man. He was of average height and surprisingly thin, all things considered. Apparently, he only weighed around 100 pounds when he was only 17. The skin of his cheeks hung loose, almost like jowls, a hint of just how much they could stretch. With his soft, fine blonde hair and unusually white mouth, Tarrare kind of reminds me of Cousin Fred from Courage the Cowardly Dog. But I digress. In any case, let's go back to the beginning. Born in 1772 in Lyon, France, Tarrare's life started off average enough, except for one little thing. He had an insatiable appetite. When Tarrare was a teenager, he needed to consume his own body weight in meat every day just to feel the illusion of contentment. In this case, that's like eating 1/4 of a cow every day. And yet, despite this, he always looked malnourished and fatigued, and his mind was as empty as a decorative vase. All of these are signs of a poor diet, which we know it wasn't the case. His parents worked tirelessly to appease his insatiable hunger, and finally had enough. They threw him out of the family home at the age of 17. Tarrare became a street performer in Paris, where he delighted and horrified crowds by swallowing anything, and I do mean anything, that his audience gave him. This ranged from stones, flints, and wine corks, and even to live animals. People would look on in horror as Tarrare would open his jaws up like a snake and hold a dozen eggs in his mouth. He could also fit a basket full of apples the same way. Although, keep in mind, the apples from back in those days did not look like ours. But back to topic, Tarrare experienced great success as a street performer. But despite his stomach appearing to be a portal to the back rooms, it seemed like his body did have its limits. It was during a performance that he collapsed due to an intestinal obstruction. He was taken to the hospital by his own audience members. And while he made a full recovery, thanks to some powerful laxatives, medical experts noted that Tarrare had some peculiarities. A sheen of sweat covered his body, even while at rest. He was constantly releasing gas from both ends of his body. It was said that he gave off a terrible odor, especially after eating, and a strange visible vapor emitted from his body. He also suffered from frequent diarrhea that was especially odorous. Despite how bizarre it was, medical experts did not take Tarrare's condition too seriously and was discharged. Now, it's not mentioned why, if it was Tarrare's choice or if he was conscripted, but Tarrare joined the French Revolutionary Army around 1789. But it's obvious he was no fighter, so instead, Tarrare took on simple jobs here and there, and even did other soldiers' tasks for them in exchange for their rations. But despite getting other people's food, it wasn't enough, and Tarrare collapsed due to extreme exhaustion. Doctors allowed him to eat more and more, until he was consuming 4 times the food rations, and yet, still, it wasn't enough. Desperate, Tarrare took to scavenging for food wherever he could find it. He searched first in the garbage. Then he took the scraps of food left on soldiers' plates. He even snuck into the physician's room to eat the poultices. These were mushy masses made from plants or crushed grains, which were placed in an open wound in order to avoid infection. Now he had the doctor's attention.
Wow.
They were so stunned by his seemingly endless hunger that they decided to test if it was indeed endless. A large meal consisting of meat pies, plates of grease and salt, and 4 gallons of milk was set up on the table. Supposedly, this meal would have been sufficient for 15 workers. But come on, that cannot be true. How can a grown man who labors all day get full with just one slice of pie and a plate of salty fat, much less 15 of them? Tarrare ate the entire meal, his stomach extending like a balloon, and promptly fell asleep. Impressed by the results, doctors decided to test the limit of Tarrare's hunger once more, and of all things, decided to keep him a live cat. But Tarrare wasn't deterred at all, and he gnashed and tore at the poor animal with his own teeth. And in the end, he ate everything except for the fur and the bones. And instead of being horrified by this and keeping animals away from Tarrare, hospital staff provided him with more and more live animals: dogs, mice, lizards, snakes, and eels, the latter which he swallowed without chewing, like slurping spaghetti, I imagine. Doctors were fascinated, and since they were in the military and there was a war going on, a light bulb went off in the doctors' heads. Why not make the best out of Tarrare's unquenchable hunger and put it to good use? So this is what they did. A piece of paper was placed inside of a small wooden box, and it was given to Tarrare to swallow. A couple of days later, the box was, retrieved. After opening the box, it was revealed that the piece of paper was still intact and very much legible. Wonderful, the doctor thought. Tarrare could serve as a messenger and sneak important military intel through enemy territory without issues. While the army's general had no doubt that Tarrare's bowels could sneak important information, he was more worried that Tarrare had a weak mind and could easily be broken. So the army decided to do a test run first. Tarrare swallowed another box with a piece of paper in it, except this time he was told to deliver it to a man in Prussia. He was also told that the paper contained sensitive information, but that was a lie. The paper basically said, "Did you get this okay? Write me back if you did." Unfortunately, Tarrare was found out almost immediately, as he didn't speak any German. And just like the French had foretold, the Prussian soldiers searched him but did not find anything suspicious on him. Still, they refused to let Tarrare go, and had him whipped and beaten until finally the poor guy gave in and confessed. Eager to obtain any crucial information, the Prussian soldiers chained Tarrare to a latrine and waited until finally the box made its appearance. But after cleaning the box and retrieving the piece of paper, the Prussian general was livid. To make him pay for wasting the army's time, Tarrare was sentenced to death. However, once at the gallows, Tarrare broke down in tears. The scene was so sad and pathetic that the Prussian general felt sorry for him. And so, instead, Tarrare was beaten one last time and released near the French border. Understandably, Tarrare wasn't willing to return to active duty. Instead, he stayed in the military's hospital and begged the doctors for a cure for his monstrous hunger. So here are some of the following treatments offered to him, all which ultimately failed. First there were opioids, then wine vinegar, then followed by tobacco pills. Doctors also tried to treat him with a lot of soft-boiled eggs. Who knows why they thought that would work, but, well, I'm not a doctor. They also just simply tried to suppress his hunger by putting him in controlled diets, but this just made Tarrare more sneaky. He would ninja his way out of the hospital to scavenge for leftover meats and organs outside of the butcher shops. He would even get into fights with stray dogs for whatever morsel of food he would find. But if you think that our perpetually hungry protagonist couldn't stoop any lower, you'd be wrong. Back in those days, there was a medical treatment called bloodletting. They did so using leeches or sometimes using a simple cut. And, well, Tarrare had been caught multiple times drinking the blood from patients undergoing this treatment. And it gets worse. Allegedly, he was also caught trying to eat the bodies at the hospital's morgue. How this guy managed to avoid persecution is astonishing and bewildering, but it is probably because one of the doctors, Dr. Percy, protected him so he could continue his experiments on Tarrare. But this protection would not last, because when a 14-month-old child went missing, everyone knew who to blame. There was no proof that Tarrare was guilty, but people had had enough of his antics, and this time, Dr. Percy could not protect him. Or maybe at this point he didn't want to. And so, Tarrare was run off from the hospital by an angry mob, and he never returned. 4 years later, in a hospital in Versailles, Tarrare died, but not from poisoning or choking or anything food-related, but from tuberculosis. Poor guy. Or maybe good riddance. I guess it depends on how you saw him. Thanks to modern medicine, we can speculate that Tarrare suffered from something called polyphagia, a condition that causes incessant hunger, which does not desist even after eating. It may have been linked to a damaged amygdala or to hyperthyroidism. No one really knows. Nevertheless, Tarrare was either seen as a freak to entertain or a freak to be studied, with no way to live a normal life. I do wonder what Tarrare would do in our time, and if perhaps he would find more compassionate family and doctors, a better quality of life, and maybe a successful job as a competitive eater.